Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting for October 6, 2020. We want to remind Victoria residents that they can watch City Council meetings live on Suddenlink 15 or 115 on our city website at www.victoriatx.gov/VTV15 or the city's Facebook page. Although we have resumed in-person meetings, the risk of spreading and contracting COVID-19 is still a reality. Seating in the council chambers is limited to allow for social distancing, and many residents may be in our high-risk population. For those reasons, we will also continue allowing citizens participation through video conference. For those who wish to access the video conference during citizens' communications, first visit www.zoom.com from your web browser. Select Join a Meeting located at the top of your browser and input 444-573-113. Again, 444-573-113 for the meeting ID. Select Join followed by Open Zoom, then Join with computer audio. Click on the icon labeled Participants to access the option to raise hand at the bottom of the screen. Once you click Raise Hand, our moderator will announce you by your username you've selected, and that will be your cue to begin speaking to council. If you wish to participate in person, please submit a comment card to city staff, who will then bring them up to me. I will call each name individually when it is your turn to speak. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes in duration and will be received by audio only. There will not be an opportunity to provide any presentation or visual materials either in person or via teleconference. Please remember to silence any cell phones, televisions, or other background noise so that we can clearly hear your comments. It is generally the practice of City Council not to respond to comments made during this time, but city staff will be available to follow up as necessary. And now, would you please, Madam Secretary, call the roll since we have some members that are video conferencing in?
Yes, sir. Councilman Delagarza?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Solis?
Present.
Councilman Bachnight?
Is he on yet?
You want me to come back to him?
Yes, please.
Councilwoman Scott?
Present.
Councilman Young? I believe he's absent. And Councilman Lofgren?
Present.
Mayor McCoy?
Present. I believe we still have a quorum to begin the meeting.
Yes, we do.
And then Mr. Balknight can come on when he's here. All right. So I will now begin the meeting.
I hear you now.
Pledge of Allegiance. Are you
Thank you.
here? He's here. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move into communications. I think we have some public and employee recognitions tonight. There's quite a few proclamations. So I will begin with those, please.
Okay. Mayor, would you like to read the announcement on the census?
I can do it. Let me come back to that after we do these.
Okay,
if you
sounds
don't
good.
mind.
Well, then we'll begin with the proclamations.
So I know there's people waiting.
The first proclamation tonight is for Fire Prevention Week, and it reads in part, whereas the city of Victoria, Texas is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Victoria, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. Whereas the Victoria Fire Department is dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Now, therefore, I, Raleigh McCoy, Mayor of the City of Victoria, Texas, do officially declare October 4th through 10th in 2020 to be Fire Prevention Week, and urge all people of Victoria by checking their kitchens for fire hazards and using safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Week 2020, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Victoria Fire Department, Fire and Emergency Services.
Ashley, can you take a picture of them with the chief as well right now?
Sure. I want to. Sure. I just wanted to thank the mayor real quick and council for this proclamation. Fire prevention and fire prevention education is so key to our mission that it's very important that we get that out. So thank you very much for the proclamation. As with everything else in our lives, COVID has made a significant impact, and Fire Prevention Week is no different. But that didn't stop Chief Legler and his team of coming up with a great idea. So this year for Fire Prevention Week, each one of our stations and crews created a fire safety video, and they're quite entertaining. So please go to our Facebook page, watch those videos, and vote, because the winner will get a meal cooked by Tom and his team, as well as, an Academy Award trophy. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can y'all center a little bit?
See you in the middle.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you.
The second proclamation tonight is for National Night Out, and it reads in part, the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a unique nationwide crime and drug and violence prevention program on October 6th, 2020, called National Night Out. And whereas National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for Victoria to join forces with thousands of other communities across the nation in promoting cooperative police community crime and drug prevention efforts, and whereas the Victoria community plays a vital role in assisting the Victoria Police Department through joint crime, drug, and violence prevention efforts in the city of Victoria, and is supporting the National Night Out 2020 locally, and whereas it is essential that all citizens of Victoria be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and the impact that their participation can have on reducing crime, drugs, and violence in Victoria, now therefore I, Raleigh McCoy, Mayor of the City of Victoria, Texas, do hereby call upon all citizens of Victoria to join the City of Victoria Police Department and the National Association of Town Watch in supporting the National Night Out on October 6th, 2020, and do hereby proclaim October 6th, 2020 as National Night Out. And it is signed by Mayor Raleigh McCoy.
Mayor, I'm not going to cook you a meal or anything like that, but we do want to thank you for your continued support and for the proclamation. Thank you, sir.
Can you center? 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you.
The third proclamation tonight is for National Colonial Heritage Month, and it reads in part, whereas the John Brewer chapter of the National Society of Colonial Dames, 17th Century of Victoria, Texas, is locally sponsoring National Colonial Heritage Month during the month of October 2020. And whereas the National Heritage Month brings to mind the first courageous settlers who arrived in America and who determined the direction for the formation of our country. And whereas the members of the society, by virtue of their lineal descent from those early arrivals, feel an obligation to work for the preservation of the priceless legacy that these early arrivals left to all American citizens. Now, therefore, Raleigh McCoy, I'm Mayor of the City of Victoria, do officially proclaim the month of October 2020 to be National Colonial Heritage Month in Victoria, Texas, and encourage all citizens of Victoria to observe this month as a means of reinforcing the priceless legacy that we inherit with our citizenship in order to help preserve our rich culture and heritage with a deep respect for the principles upon which our great country was founded. And it is signed today by Mayor Raleigh McCoy. Our next proclamation is for National 4-H Week. And it reads in part, whereas the City of Victoria is proud to honor the 4-H Youth Development Program of the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service for 113 years of providing experience-based education to youngsters throughout the Lone Star State. And whereas this admirable program, which seeks to provide learning experience for the whole child, including head, heart, hands, and health, helps young Texans to acquire knowledge, develop life skills, and form attitudes to enable them to become self-directed, productive, and contributing members of our society. And whereas throughout its proud history, the 4-H program has developed positive role models for countless Texans throughout its innovative and inspiring programs, continues to build character and instill the values that we have made our state strong and great. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Raleigh McCoy, Mayor of the City of Victoria, Texas, do officially declare October 4th through 10th to be National 4-H Week in Victoria, Texas, and commend the 4-H Youth Development Program of Texas and the many men and women who have made the program a success. And it is signed today by Mayor Raleigh McCoy.
Thank you. We have a few little cards. It won't take too long, but I wanted to introduce everyone real quick. My name's Paige Melton, and I'm the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Agent for Victoria County for our 4-H and Youth Development Program. And we have a lot of our senior ambassadors here, so I'll just kind of point. We have Caitlin John, Riley Amsler, Maddie Nunez, Cody Nunez, William Wright, Trapper Fearbacher, J.C. Rossler, Bennett Jansen, and we have Gail Bluda. She's our family and community health agent as well for Extension. So I'll turn over to 4 kids real quick, and then if we could take a big group picture. If not, no big deal, but I'll turn over real quick too.
More than 6 million young people across the country will be celebrating National 4-H Week. It is an annual celebration of 4-H held the first full week of October. This is a week that our youth showcase the great things that 4-H offers young people and highlights the incredible 4-H youth in our community who work each day to make a positive impact in the community.
National 4-H Week is also a week that we recognize our volunteers, sponsors, donors, and supporters. We know our program would not function without the time, dedication, and passion of these hardworking individuals in our community.
The Victoria County 4-H program has 18 different community and project clubs across the county for youth to be a part of. Some of the major projects our youth participate in are shooting sports, livestock, food and nutrition, outdoor education, and leadership.
Last year, we had over 550 active 4-H members and hundreds of volunteers. Our goal as ambassadors is to increase our membership even more for the new 4-H year and to continue to spread the word about 4-H and all it offers.
My name is Gail Bluda, and I'm the Family Community Health Agent. And I have 7 state-level ambassadors that are committed to performing 40 hours of service this coming year in health programming. And I'm very excited about that.
If y'all can start making your way for the picture.
Yep.
Are y'all done with the comments?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
These 2 extra ones down. Sure. Okay, let's roll together. Whoever needs to be centered.
Jen.
I'll tell you if I yes, they're trying to put Mayor in the middle here. Okay, looks great
We
so
got
far.
snacks for the
I can see
executive
everyone.
meeting.
Okay. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you.
There's a few more.
Yeah, a few pictures for our homeless.
Any more?
That's it. Okay, we're proud of kiddos. Yes,
Should be.
Thank you for your support.
Mayor and Council, our final proclamation tonight is for Persons with Disabilities Employment History and Awareness Month. And it reads in part, whereas persons with disabilities have always played an important role in our community, our state, and nation by demonstrating such qualities and characteristics as determination, perseverance, and independence. Their participation in workforce, education, military service, and contributions to the arts and humanities have diversified the culture of our state. And whereas In the Crossroads region, the Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation, Workforce Solutions of the Golden Crescent, and countless other public and private organizations serve thousands of customers and their families annually. And whereas for much of our nation's history, individuals with a disability had very limited protection against discrimination in housing, employment, education, and community engagement and accessibility. And whereas we as a nation celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act passed by Congress in support against those discriminations, and whereas the City of Victoria remains committed to valuing and serving all of its citizens and visitors with a disability, now, therefore, I, Raleigh McCoy, Mayor of the City of Victoria, Texas, do officially declare the month of October to be Persons with Disabilities Employment History and Awareness Month. And it is signed today by Mayor Raleigh McCoy.
Look up, did you want to say anything?
Every year, we recognize individuals with disability. Here recently, with the pandemic, unemployment rates, of course, have gone high. But unfortunately, individuals with disabilities and even youth with disabilities have higher unemployment rates. We are in charge, along with the Texas Workforce Commission Vocational Rehab Services. We're here to provide services and make sure that those individuals with disabilities have an opportunity to become self-sufficient. Again, thank you so much for allowing this proclamation.
Thank you, and thank you all for all the work you do. It's very important to our community. Okay.
Mayor, if it's all right with you, I can handle the announcements.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and read the census. Please.
Absolutely. The 2020 census announced that the deadline for residents to self-respond has been extended until October 31st. If Victoria residents have not yet responded, they can do so through the census mail-in form, by phone, or online at my2020census.gov. Also, if anyone is present at tonight's council meeting, we have city staff available with iPads standing by as well should you need assistance in responding to the census. Again, you have until October 31st to respond. As always, for more information, feel free to visit victoriacounts.com. Additionally, we recently promoted and put out a notice that we're still seeking, or that we are beginning to seek interest in the Tourism Advisory Board. So that went out today. And so for those that might be tuning in, we encourage them to visit victoriatx.gov/tourism for more information. The deadline to apply for that board is Friday, November 6th at 5 p.m. Lastly, under the employee recognition aspect of the update, I do want to briefly recognize Tiffany Toda. As you know, she's a huge asset for us with Municipal Court, not only for our organization, but for the association that she's involved with. She stood in front of you before with recognitions in that sense. We had a nice little surprise for her yesterday because normally she would be at a conference this week, but it turned virtual. And so somebody with the association surprised her with the Distinguished Service Award for her outstanding contribution to her field and the region. This is an award that a member of the association may only win once in their career. And so we're very fortunate that we have one of those recipients amongst our staff. And so we want to publicly congratulate Tiffany for that accomplishment. Those are all the announcements.
Okay. We'll move on to items from council. Are there any items from council this evening?
I'd like to pull D6.
Okay. Any other items from council this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to citizens' communication. I might mention that we do have some public hearings tonight, 2 public hearings. If you're here to speak on the matter, it's a public hearing, please reserve your comments for that time. So I have 3 notes. Ma'am, do you want to speak?
I believe she's one of the 3, Mayor. I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
Trying to figure out which one.
Let me know when.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hello, my name is Gail Repka, and I've been serving as a Parks Commissioner since 2014, and I just want to introduce myself to the new council if some of you don't know me. Some of my interest as a Parks Commissioner for the last 6 years has been developing a new disc golf course at Fox's Bend, and we're proud to announce the river course at Fox's Bend has been completed. Phase 1 was completed with 9 holes in 2016, and Phase 2 was completed in February of 2020. Thanks to the new staff here and Mr. Garza, they pulled it off, a great install. We celebrated the grand opening of that new disc golf course in February. At the grand opening for Fox's Bend was the Victoria Open 2020. If you'll see on some of your desks, I've left y'all some custom stamped disc from that event to promote disc golf and hopefully to encourage some of the council members to get out and start playing disc golf. Those are mid-ranges. There's putters, drivers, and mid-ranges. So we have 2 wonderful courses at Riverside, and we also have another 9-hole course at Tracy Park. And we're working on installing a new 18-hole disc golf course out at Patriot Park. I wanted to recognize the disc golf design team. It was established in 2015, and it's a volunteer professional group of disc golf players. And the team coordinator is Kevin Willis. He works with the Texas Parks and Wildlife. And the team leader is Ron Engelbretson. Also, team members are Tim Engelbretson, Bradley Williams, both of Austin, and Wallace Hall of One Star Disc Golf here. The team is now affectionately referred to as the Fox's Bend Design Team. So we look forward to them designing a lot more courses here around town. The more 18-hole championship disc golf courses that Victoria hosts, the more sports tourism that we will attract. Our Riverside Disc Golf Course is infamous in its own right, and it was established in 1984. So we're fixing to celebrate 38 years in 2021. So we're really excited about that. Another project of interest as a Parks Commissioner has been revitalization of the Pebble Beach at Grover's Bend in Riverside Park. With the new clearing and the additional picnic tables and trash can, this area has proven to be most popular in Victoria. And every time I run into folks down there, they're asking for more picnic tables, barbecue pits, and trash cans. So just to let y'all know. Recently, over the last 6 years, I've been compiling quite a list of areas of community interest. And I recently shared them with the new administration here. And it's amazing how outstanding the new administration is. I can't tell y'all how wonderful it is to work with you guys. I just want to share some of the projects that I've brought up to the new admin, and we're making a list, and they're checking them off as completed. But these are some of the items just to let you know what we're wanting to do. And that's putting some finishing touches on the Fox's Bend Disc Golf Course. There's about 3 items there just to tie it up to make it real nice. Lots of folks have been wanting to replace some trees that were lost during Harvey in Riverside Park, especially the ones on the Riverside Disc Golf Course. I've got lots of requests from people wanting to add more amenities in Riverside, especially benches, tables, trash cans, fire pits, barbecue tables. Folks have suggested doggy disposal stations along the hike and bike trails, and perhaps even some restrooms and freshwater rinses at Pebble Beach. If any of you have ever been to Pebble Beach, you notice you get all super sandy, and it all comes home with you too, especially in your car. Other items that have been brought to my attention is perhaps fixing the original kayak exit at the pump house. The rubber mat made for a much easier exit when you're kayaking. But right now, the bottom of that ramp is washed out. It's been washed out for quite some time, and it's forcing folks to use the floating dock situation, which is it's kind of an unpleasant situation there. Also, another item of interest is the South Street Bridge boat ramp. It's been washed out for many, many years, and this is a wonderful park. It has a deep shaded area, and it would be really great to return some of the picnic tables and trash cans to that area as well. Always been on my list is the creation of more river access points. for Riverside to enable more fishing and river recreation. Also, maybe establishing a tubing trail in Grover's Bend for consumer safety while exploring the river. On everybody's list, I think, is paving Pebble Beach parking lot, maybe repaving the street through Fox's Bend, and the Tracy Lee Ethel Disc Golf Course. We're looking at maybe removing some rose hedges there. The course was cut in a big field of rose hedges. And are you fixing to cut me off?
We had a lot to do tonight.
I have one more thing I would like to address, and perhaps it's as another hat. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to come back. As a Parks Commissioner since 2014, in 2016, we had a spinoff group called the Victoria Parks Coalition. It was established in 2016. The original board members were Parks Commissioners Lee Keeling, Jamie Brown, and myself. I wanted to let you guys know that we have newly elected board members just here in October, and I will be the new president. I am the new president. Laura Kennison, former Parks Commissioner, is acting as vice president. Linnell Rashid, former executive of VBEC, is our secretary. Jamie Brown is our treasurer. He's also a former Parks Commissioner. Wallace Brown is a board member. Russell Bessing with Bessing Insurance is on our board, and Jody Yancey Sandoval just joined us, as well as Lee Keeling. Like I mentioned before, in February 2020.
If I may, please.
All right.
Way past.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to let everyone know, if anyone has any interest in the Victoria Parks Coalition, check us out on Facebook. We're doing a new fundraiser to promote or raise funds to secure the disc golf course at Patriot Park. We look forward to working with the county, and the city is partnering with us on the establishment of that course. So
thank you very much.
VictoriaParks.org or Victoria Coalition on Facebook.
We appreciate the hard work and what you're doing.
Thank you, guys. And enjoy your disc. Please come play disc golf.
Now we'll call Lee Keeling to the mic, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, how are you all this evening?
Fine.
I'm Lee Keeling, 112 Spokane Street, and I wanted to address the issue on your agenda as item E1, which is the adjustments we're going to make to the Parks Commission itself. You've heard from our very enthusiastic Gail Repka. I was going to point out that she has done an amazing job with this new private nonprofit that we created. I'm only disappointed to learn that I'm still on the board. I've been trying to get off for months, but anyway, that introduces an entirely new and different way to bring the public into making decisions about what's going on with the parks, and also the ability to raise funds outside of in a private foundation setting. The point I wanted to make is really just this. You all have, in the last month, I believe, approved a new set of bylaws and adjusted the ordinance that governs the Parks Commission. And in doing that, what you've done is set us on a new and different direction that we really needed to move towards. We are going to be much more involved and much more serious about planning, and we can address through that process a lot of the things that Gail's talking about, the particular items that she's brought to your attention tonight. And so we're looking very forward to doing that. You have a great list of candidates to appoint for the Parks Commission. You've got several different ways to go mechanically tonight. I realize that, and I don't think you can make a mistake whichever way you decide to go. So I simply rise to speak in favor of item E1 and hope that you will make your decision on how to set up the Parks Commission. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Keeling. Next, I'll call Ashley McGee.
Hi, I'm Ashley McGee. I'm owner of Flow Paddle Co. And first of all, I'd like to say good evening to Mayor McCoy and to the City Council. Thank you for having me today. I'm running for Parks and Recreation Commission, and mainly my goal is to bring more people to our parks, all of our parks. I obviously have a strong interest in kayaking and rentals and Riverside, and I'm looking to grow our business and bring more guests. But at this time, I think that I could really help with some of the reformation in the park that they are planning to do. One of the many things that I have on my list is there's a concrete pad that sits in the park that is empty with palm trees, and it's paved, and there's parking, ample parking, and the food truck festival, I think, does very well, and that would be a great place for food trucks to have a food truck lot, and that would bring more people, because a lot of things that I hear a lot of requests from people that they want more options to eat. They want a hot dog, they want a burger, they want to have picnics in the park. And the pump house is lovely. Like, we go eat there practically every week. But that's one of the many things that I'd like to bring. I want to help with the duck pond, and hopefully one day put some paddle boats back in. I think about when I was a little girl here in this community and all the things that I like to do. And I guess I'm hoping to bring more people, but also more business life down there. So if you had a food truck lot, that would bring you more income. Y'all entered into a private partnership with me and my business, and this would bring in more business for you. That's guaranteed rental income. And also, like I said, it provides a lot of people meals on their lunch breaks. Let's see, with the duck pond, the iconic bridge, I have pictures of me on it from the time I was a little girl, and I have a picture of my oldest son on that. I think that when we lost that bridge, I don't know, there's something about Victoria, and it's beautiful and unique in its own way, and that there's a character, and that bridge had character, and there's a piece of our parks, I feel like it has a lot of character, and it just hasn't been tapped into. And we could do more to help with that as well as a community. When I was a little girl, the brick pavers, they're at the children's park. When you first come in, they have your name on them. And children throughout the whole city were offered to spend $20 and you could pave the children's park, and it helped fund that park. I think we need to do more things that pay for the projects that we want to be down there. I mean, I know that there's a lot of grant money out there too to help with these things, but I spend a lot of time in places like Landa Park, and I go over there, and we used to have a train. We used to have paddle boats. We used to have these things. I want more life, I guess, in our parks, and I want to help bring that. It's just I was already making a list before I even heard about this commission, and I'd really like to help assist y'all in that. I also want to get more organizations, especially our nonprofit organizations, get them to hold more and host more events in our parks. So we're doing the Victoria Symphony is doing a duck race coming up, and I think that those kind of events push people to go to Riverside, and push people to go to the parks. And if we have more organizations utilizing those properties, that we might get more people just to go. It's been kind of slow because of COVID, and I think that there's a lot that we can do, a lot of projects that we could work on with these groups to make sure that the parks are still getting utilized, and even social distancing wise. Parks and Rec is doing a great job. we have a Halloween event coming up, so lots of different businesses are getting involved in that to make sure that kids still have a Halloween. I want to help assist and, bringing life, I guess, down there. Okay. Do y'all have any questions for me? No? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.
Okay. Mr. Stephen Fort.
Thank you, Mayor McCoy, council members. I'm here. I submitted an application for the Parks Commission as well, and I just wanted to come by and introduce myself, give you a little bit of background. I'll be very brief. Newish resident to Victoria. My family moved here 6 years ago from Atlanta, Georgia. It's been a really good decision so far, so we hope that keeps that way. I saw the opportunity for the Parks Commission, and my children play a lot of organized sports, soccer, volleyball, softball. So I wanted to possibly get involved in that and just help keep the Parks and Rec Department going in the direction that they're going, which I kind of perceive as a positive direction as of late. So just wanted to volunteer my time, hopefully do what I can. I've got about 20 plus years of operational management experience from large corporations to small business. So kind of a jack of all trades, if you will, in regards to that. So just wanted to come by and say hello. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Freese, is there anybody online?
Yes, Mayor. We have Ashley who wishes to speak.
Okay. Can you put her on?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and Council staff. My name is Ashley Sisson, and I am a resident of Victoria. I've applied to be appointed to the Library Advisory Board, and I want to thank y'all for carrying my application. I'm an avid patron of the Victoria Public Library, and though I don't have much past volunteering experience, I do have a great love and high respect for the library and its mission in the Victoria community. I'd be very grateful for the opportunity to serve and to give back to the library and provide an enthusiastic patron's perspective to the advisory board. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope y'all have a good evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else online?
Mayor, we have David Foskus.
Okay. Mr. Foskus, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I am David Fastis. So I thank you for taking the time to hear from me today. And I'm a longstanding member of our community. I've moved here in 2001 and have grew up here and graduated from both Victoria College and UHV. Have been involved in the community, work here, have friends and family here. So very tight-knit community. I love Victoria. I have served in the community for several years. I've served in the Victoria Bach Festival where I currently serve. I've served as treasurer there for several years. Currently serve in the Victoria Fine Arts Association, currently treasurer for that association as well, as the Welder Center Advisory Board and Kiwanis. Something that I'm really passionate about is education. I've served through VBEC as a mentor, in addition to teaching some finance and economics courses through junior achievement to local high schools, junior highs, and something I've really enjoyed. And I know that that is something that I think is aligning me with being able to serve on the library board. So I'm really excited about this opportunity, and I really hope that I am able to pursue that because their pursuit of educating young readers, of helping our community become more literate, is I think just really something that our community needs. It's a vital lifeline for a lot of people that don't have the ability to even have simple resources like getting online that are just necessary in today's age. So the library is really, I think, a very valuable resource. I've this year been very happy to serve, to have a live streaming event where I was able to play for the library, my guitar. And I really look forward to hopefully doing that again and serving in further capacity with the library potentially. So again, I'm just excited for this opportunity and looking forward to hearing from the results.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Is anyone else online? Is anyone else here that would like to speak to council? Seeing none, we'll move into items with public hearings. Mr. Goosh.
Yes, sir. Item C1 is a budget amendment for coronavirus hazard pay program, and this is a first reading.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. This budget amendment is being requested in order to fund the first hazard pay program, which will be reimbursed by the COVID-19 grant fund from the feds. And the total amount of this first payout is about $1.4 million, of which we got close to about $500,000 in our cash right now. So the difference over slightly over $900,000 needed to make sure we get this paid out to the corresponding individual by the end of this month. As you recall, we mentioned this back in the budget process. I think Mr. Garza made a presentation how we plan to pay this out. Majority of this, 90% plus, is related to the public safety side of it. And if you permit me, I would like to give you an update where we're at with the COVID-19 fund. Last time you saw this back in June, I believe. So I won't spend too much time with all the slides, but I just want to hit some of the highlights. For example, this page is a reminder that back in May, we got notice that we were eligible to be awarded this grant of the I just keep saying COVID-19 if you don't mind, grant fund. So, and it has to be paid out by December 30th. And we applied for it. We submitted all the contract forms by June the 2nd. So we're ahead of the curve right here. As a reminder, the total grant proceeds is $3.7 million. We already received 20% of that back in June, which is about $741,000. The remaining 80%, which will be reimbursed on a reimbursement where we got to spend the money to get reimbursed. So this $900,000, for example, budget minute, I'm going to submit this towards the end, actually the first week of November, start submitting these programs plus future expenses, other expenses we already have into the TDM so we can start getting reimbursed. As you might recall, there's one primary test, well, there's several tests, but the key one here, you got a 75% expenditure test where it has to be spent on medical and public health and public safety individuals or programs that are directly related or mitigated in response to the COVID-19 issue. For example, public safety or any type of medical expenses like that. The other 25% is basically for other programs like economic support, grant funding, loans, or distant learning expenditures, computer stuff like that. So the main key here, we want to make sure we're in the 75-25 test. So far, as you know, like I mentioned, we submitted the program. Back in June, we mentioned that we sent out a lot of forms out to departments so we can get some feedback as to what are some possible projects that we can do with the money. Those projects were narrowed down and were submitted to TDM because I don't want to start paying for some project that I'm not going to get reimbursed. So I want to get a pre-approval to make sure everything's okay. So here we are tonight, one of the biggest ones that has pay. And again, I said, I plan to submit, once we got this paid out, I think the last payment is in October 30th. Once I have that paid out, I'm going to go directly to TDM and submit the expenditures with all the payroll reports and everything so we can get reimbursed on this money. It usually takes about a 30-day return. This slide here basically just tells you how we meet our 75-25% test. On the left-hand side is the 75% categories. The 25% is on the right-hand side. I'm not going to go through all the details, but bottom line, on the 75%, we have approximately $3.1 million of eligible expenses. And on the 25%, we've got $641. And on the far right, you can see 3.7. That's the grant. 75%, I have to meet $2.8 million for sure. And you can see I already meet that because I have about 3.1 of expenses that I can make sure I can meet that requirement. So bottom line, what's going to be submitted today and the future is this as we see it today. I have hazard pay for $1.4 million. January, we plan to come back for the second phase of the hazard pay, and that'd be around $600,000. We're going to ask for the reimbursement of expenses that we have incurred so far is about $878,000. We've got a grant administrator we talked about, reimbursement of $26,000. Unemployment claims, $12,000. Public outreach, $1,900. Disinfectant supplies, PPE, that's about $1,900. $102,000. Excuse me. Hand washer, sanitary devices, $21,000. COVID testing, about $25,000. Right there is your 3.1. So that's our 75%. So we're okay. We're ready to go there. On the 25%, basically, we're going to get for the reimbursement for the loan program, $500,000. We're ready to submit it for the laptops, hardware and software, $61,000 for distant learning or work related. Dark Track cyber defense software is $30,000. Quarantine. What I mean by that is, I don't know if you recall, we had a fire department that needed to be quarantined. We had hotel expenses, etc. That's at $1,800. Teleconferencing equipment software, $1,600. And a social distance barriers and signs at about $32,000. So we got a $640,000 in the 25% category. So if you take your $3 million and the $640,000, you come up with the $3.7 million, which is the total 100% of the grant. That's how it's going to be paid out. Hopefully everything goes smooth. And tonight, October 6th, as I mentioned before, we got the budget amendment for 1.4, of which I have about $460,000 in cash right now from that $700,000 money we spent. So I need about $900 to make sure we get this paid out by October 30th. And then I'm going to, again, repeating myself, but I'm going to submit this for reimbursement to them early November. Just for FYI, I know it's out there. They got another program out there called Heroes Act. I don't know where it's going to go. But if it does go through, the unique part about this, which I kind of like, and they should have done this the first time, is that it allows the cities to reimburse themselves for any loss of revenue due to COVID-19. Wow, what a magical thought. But anyway, it takes a while. But anyway, they're working towards that progress. So if this goes through, it'd be a great thing for us. But this is a different allocation. And I think also, if I read it right, it applies to the first one. So they might change the rules on that too. Other than that, Council, Mayor, that's all I have for tonight. So I'm requesting this budget amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for
Mayor? I just really want to add that this does not account for the funds that funneled down to us through the CDBG program. And so I want to make clear to you and to the public that might be tuning in that those dollars that funnel down through the CDBG process, we did prioritize those to assisting some of our service agencies, and we've already allocated some of those funds. And we did recently receive another allocation that ultimately would put our total of CDBG allocated dollars at over $800,000. We are working on a game plan on how to put a call out and distribute the additional funds. And so we'll provide more information to you as we follow that process.
All right, any other questions from staff? Hearing none, I will now open a public hearing on this matter. Anyone that wishes to speak on this matter, please step forward or raise your hand on Zoom. Is anyone on? I see no one coming, so I will now close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on item C1. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Now move on to the next item.
Mayor, item C2 is a public hearing on the City of Victoria's application to the Texas General Land Office for a grant from the Community Development Block Grant Mitigation Program.
Emily?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's hearing is to inform the public that the comment period on the city's application to the General Land Office for the CDBG MIT grant is opening on October 12th. This public comment period will be open for 14 days. A link to the project description, maps, and estimated budgets for the city's proposed project will be posted on the city's website along with an email address for making comment. No action from council is required tonight, and work on the city's application is still in progress. However, I wanted to talk a little bit about the projects we're working on to submit for this grant proposal. As you know, the focus for community development block grant projects is to benefit low to moderate income households, which is why public comment period is important. In this case, the goal is to increase, and I'm quoting from CDBG here, to increase resilience to disasters and reduce or eliminate the long-term risk of loss of life, injury, damage to and loss of property, and suffering and hardship by lessening the impact of future disasters, specifically in areas where there are concentrations of low to moderate income persons. We have worked to identify continuous block groups within the city that put our proposed project over the 51% scoring requirement of benefit to low to moderate income persons. And in fact, you'll probably recognize these areas as those where flooding has historically been a problem. These include Mid-Victoria Residential, Red River, and Lone Tree Acres. Mid-Victoria Residential is bounded by Sam Houston, Houston Highway, Red River, and Highway 87. When this area was constructed throughout the 50s and 60s, the drainage system was designed based on storm frequency models that have become outdated, and this area has been identified in need of improvement within the city's master drainage plan. This area floods during short duration intense storms, and flooding there has been a hindrance to emergency response in the area in the past. Improving the drainage, water, and storm sewer systems, along with reconstruction of the road grading, will significantly reduce flooding in the area and will impact approximately 3,500 persons. The Red River area begins at Ben Wilson Street and extends east toward the intersection with Sam Houston Drive, then south along Delmar and all the way to the existing drainage south of the railroad to a ditch that drains into Lone Tree Creek. This area was also constructed in the 50s, and these neighborhoods have experienced flooding events. Improvements in this area include construction of a box culvert and cleaning and reshaping the ditch that drains into Lone Tree Creek. This will reduce flooding frequency in the area and will benefit nearly 800 persons, along with reducing flood risk and easing access to Citizens Medical Center, UHV, VC, government facilities, and various businesses. Additionally, these improvements will ease traffic during storms and heavy rain through the intersection of Red River and Ben Wilson, which includes approximately 20,000 vehicles per day. The Lone Tree Acres projects includes opening an outfall from Lone Tree Creek west along Lone Tree Road, then up along the east side of Lone Tree Creek to Hayek Avenue, and will add drainage to Collins, Lala, and Thurmond that lie directly south of Lone Tree Acres. Drainage improvements include enclosing roadside ditches into storm sewer pipes and adding curb and gutter with storm sewer inlets. These improvements will require street reconstruction. The overall benefit will affect approximately 90 homes. Do you have any questions about our upcoming application?
Any questions?
We wish you luck with it.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah, there's some important projects on there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Red River especially. So any further questions of staff? This matter, hearing none, I will now open a public hearing on this matter. Anyone here to speak, please step forward, or is anyone online, raise your hand, please. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I so move. But I have a question.
Mayor, I'm sorry,
Wait,
just
need a
as a
second.
procedural point, there is no motion necessary.
that's
There is
right.
no action tonight.
Okay.
That's right. But I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
These areas that we're talking about,
Yes, ma'am.
would it be beneficial for those of the people that you want to contact so that they could come and make some kind of a comment?
Well, that's
Please try and make your comments on the city website.
yes, ma'am.
Because we do need this money, and the more people that are aware that their area is going to be impacted, they need to know about it. I mean, we talk about it here, but not everybody sees, the meetings or goes to the website.
Of course.
I don't know if there's anything else that we could use.
We could
social
possibly
media.
also publish the public comment period, the notice of it in the newspaper.
Yes, or social media or something.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely the newspaper. I think these areas, putting it on social media may not get the information to them. So
Yes,
I was
ma'am.
glad to hear you say newspaper.
Yes.
Television, anything. Yeah, television.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible. I've thought before this might be for Mr. Gill to consider that when we run the line down Red River and Delmar in paralleling and going under the railroad to the Lone Tree Ditch, has there been any thought of ever turning and running a culvert along the highway, get rid of those open ditches, and then at the end of that go through and under so that people can connect there instead of under the railroad track?
that could be a possibility. I think that'd be something that we can look at with a drainage engineer if we're selected. Anything's possible.
Well, I just a thought that hit me some time ago that it might be able to close some of those ditches.
Yes,
along
that's true.
the highway there, because you ultimately have to get back.
We still got to get back to Lone Tree Creek one way or another. That's true.
You do it one time under the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Only comment. All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, pulling item, what was it, D6, I believe?
D6, yes, sir. In addition to that, Mayor and members of council, there are 2 items on the consent agenda tonight that we do not need action on. Item D5, which is the purchase of 10 vehicles, will be brought back at a subsequent meeting for consideration by council, but we will not take it up tonight. And item D9, which is the purchase of topsoil. The bids on that project came in lower than expected, so no council action is necessary. So we will not include those 2 items in the consent agenda tonight. The remaining items include item D1, which is the adoption of minutes of the City Council meeting of September 15th, 2020, and the special meeting of City Council on September 25th, 2020. D2, which is approval of the Victoria Housing Finance Corporation bylaws. D3, the approval of various projects adopted by the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation. D4, the approval of a professional services agreement to provide administrative services to the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation for the amount of $173,854. D7, which is granting a variance to Section 21-82B2 lot size standards for property located at 108 North Depot and 705 East Forest Streets. And finally, D8, approving a renewal agreement for the 800 megahertz radio system support and maintenance with Motorola Solutions for $398,244.12.
Okay.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the amended consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Is that Mr. Balknight?
There was an affirmative vote from Mr. Balknight. Item D6, Mayor, is the approval of the fiscal year 2021 interlocal agreement with the Golden Crescent Regional Planning Commission to operate the Victoria Public Transit System.
Ms. Fulgham?
Good evening, Council. I can try and answer any questions, but we also have Felisa Cortines and Michael Ada with Golden Crescent Regional Planning Commission on Zoom to assist.
Okay, any questions?
No, the only thing is I have to abstain. I'm the president, so I have to abstain.
Oh, sure.
Any other questions for Ms. Fulgham?
I move to adopt D6.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt item D6. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Give a little
Thank you.
more
Did
pause.
Mr. Balknight get his
There was an
vote?
affirmative vote
Yes.
from Mr. Balknight, I heard, yes.
Okay. We will now move on to
Item
items for
E1.
council discussion.
Yes, sir. Item E1 is a resolution to appoint members to the Parks and Recreation Commission and to approve a variance to the bylaws to allow reappointment of 3 commissioners.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a brief presentation to give you concerning the Parks and Recreation Commission appointments. The purpose of the Parks and Recreation Commission was recently clarified by Ordinance 2020-141, which states the purpose will be to advise Parks and Recreation Department on matters pertaining to planning the acquisition of park and recreation areas and facilities, the development of park and recreation areas and facilities, and any other items determined by the Parks and Recreation Director. The composition of that board is 9 members. They serve 3-year staggered terms. According to the bylaws, they cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. And former members will be eligible to serve after abstaining a minimum of 1 year from the date of their term expiration. And any member originally appointed to fill a vacancy may serve 2 full terms in addition to their unexpired terms if the vacancy had less than 18 months remaining when appointed. So our currently members are Lee Keeling, Mike Rivera, Gail Repka, Gloria Rodriguez,
Jesse Olivares, and you see 4 vacancies there. So this board has been a little inactive for a while, which created some vacancies, and we did have one person that gave her resignation from the board. So we're trying to fill those 4 vacancies, and then we're also asking staff is asking for a variance to the bylaws to allow Mr. Keeling, Mike Rivera, and Gail Repka to serve another full term. And the reason that we're asking for the variance to the bylaws is due to a lack of meetings held on the commission in 2019 and half of 2020, which they were inactive, the ongoing parks master plan, and staff does believe that board continuity would provide more historical knowledge of the needs and wants of the community in relation to the parks. So the appointments. Available positions, if a variance is given to the bylaws, then we have 1 vacancy with an unexpired term ending in 2021, September of 2021, and 3 vacancies with an unexpired term ending in September of 2022. If the variance to the bylaws is not approved, that would create also 3 additional full terms ending in September of 2023. So it's a little confusing. The 1-year term that's currently unexpired has less than 18 months remaining on that, so the person appointed to that position would still be eligible for 2 more full terms, which means they could serve a possible total of 7 years. And anyone that's appointed to the 2-year term that we have, then they could be eligible for only 1 more term, which would mean a possible 5-year appointment. So during council consideration tonight, we're first going to ask you to decide whether or not to grant that variance to the bylaws to allow Mr. Keeling, Mr. Rivera, and Ms. Repka to continue to serve for another term. And then if that is granted, then we will move on to asking you to consider filling the vacancy left by the resignation of Drill Trevino, which would be the 1-year term that would end in September 2021. And then the third item that we will consider is asking you to appoint applicants to fill the 3 terms that were not filled in 2019 when the Parks Commission was inactive, which would be 2-year terms, which would end in September of 2022. So before we get to this screen, I do want to apologize to council, as well as Ms. Angie Stafford and Ms. Ingerly Sparkman. It came to my attention today that those 2 ladies are not eligible for appointment to this board because they live outside of city limits, and I do apologize for my failure to notice that before today. And so they will not be considered during those appointments. But we do have Brian Billingsley, Lori Etter, Stephen Fort, Tim Hornback, Ashley McGee, Benjamin F. Smith, and Justin Urbano. And then Mr. Keeling, Mr. Rivera, and Gail Repka are asking to be reappointed if you give the variance to the bylaws.
Can I ask you to back up one?
Sure.
I got one question for you.
Sure.
One more.
Yes, sir.
On the second appointment that's actually for 1 year for the vacancy left by Ms. Trevino.
Yes.
It says that this person would be eligible to serve 2 more full terms.
Yes, sir.
Where if the third ones, they're only eligible for 1 more.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Yes, sir. And that's because the 2-year term is longer than 18 months, which according to the bylaws, they can only serve 1 more full term then.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So each applicant is aware of the terms that are available, and each applicant is willing to serve any of the terms if they are appointed, and but some did have references, which was included in the packet that was sent to you. Do y'all have any questions? Okay, so in front of you, my assistant Angelina set ballots for the appointments to the Parks Commission. So you'll need to write your name on the ballot because we can't have secret ballots, and those ballots will be available to the public through my office if anyone wishes to come in and look at those. So we ask you to put your name there. Each of them are numbered 1 through 12.
Before you get into the ballots, ask about the variance.
Okay. Okay. Sure. So you'll see the ballots there, and those will begin to use. But before we start using those ballots, the first question is, do you wish to grant the variance to the bylaws to allow Mr. Keeling, Ms. Repka, and Mr. Rivera to continue serving on the board until September of 2023.
I would assume that would take a motion and a second.
I move.
I second it.
We
I
have
think
a,
it's a stellar idea. That was a motion.
right. We have a motion and a second to
I did
accept
the motion, he did
variance of the bylaws. So is there any discussion on that item? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay. So that fills 3 of the 7 spots that were open on that board. So now we're going to consider the 1-year spot on that board. So I'm going to ask you to take that ballot, mark number 1, place your name on it, and circle one person that you wish to appoint to the 1-year term on the Parks Commission that would end in September of 2021. Please. And my assistant will come around and collect those. Okay, so we're going to take just a moment and tally those votes. So the person who ends up with the most votes will be given that position, and we may have to go to a tiebreaker if necessary. One moment.
As a point of information for Mayor and Council, Councilmember Balknight, who is attending this meeting remotely, is texting his votes to my work cell phone, and we are including his votes in this process as well.
So after tallying the ballots, Miss Ashley McGee was awarded 2 votes, and the other ones that were awarded, Lori Utter, Stephen Fort, and Benjamin Smith and Justin Urbano all only received 1. So that gives a majority to Miss McGee, so she will be appointed to the 1-year position on that board. Okay, so now we're going to move to the 3 vacancies that we have for 2-year terms. If you'll please take ballot number 2 and circle 3 people. Again, we will go with the majority, and if it's necessary to do tie-breaking votes, we will do that.
Do you want us to scratch off Ashley's name since she was
Yes,
already
please.
picked?
You can, or just do not choose that one, please.
While we're voting, I'd just like to say this is a really difficult decision because these
Yes, ma'am.
applicants are wonderful.
Yes, and we
I
got so
appreciate
many,
them
which is
all.
great, yes.
Yeah.
And some of you may recall that some of them, even though they didn't speak tonight, have spoken in the last couple of council meetings.
Yes. We'll take just a moment to tally those. Okay, so the 3 highest vote getters in this were Lori Etter with 6, Stephen Fort with 4, and Justin Urbano with 5 votes. So that gives the 3 of them the majority of the votes to be placed in those 3 positions that end in September of 2022. The other votes went to 2 for Mr. Smith and 1 for Mr. Hornbeck. Okay. So I believe that ends that. We just need a motion to fill in those names on the resolution.
So moved. Sorry.
Second. Motion
It's second.
and a second.
Seconded, yes.
We'll count a double motion as a motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Well, that was easier than I thought it was.
Yes, sir.
It was a good job, April.
Mayor,
Well,
the next item is
because
also,
we had such excellent candidates, and I will echo what Ms. Scott said. We want to thank everybody that puts their name forward for these commissions, because it's very important to our city to have such high quality of people that are willing to step forward and put their name forward for these positions, and we appreciate it very much.
Mayor, item E2 is a resolution to appoint or reappoint members to the Victoria Public Library Advisory Board.
Good evening again. This time we're going to consider a resolution to appoint and reappoint members to the Library Advisory Board. So the purpose or focus of the Library Advisory Board is to be a liaison between the community and governing bodies and library management, to provide feedback to library management in areas of policy, planning, and library goals, and to advocate for library budget and monetary support, to advocate and support legislative initiatives concerning the library, and to perform other duties and functions as delegated by the city and the county. So the board composition is that all appointments are for 3 years, and city appointees can serve 2 consecutive terms, and county appointees may serve 3 consecutive terms. And this board is a little different than most of the others that we have, because it is an 11-member board, but 4 members are appointed by the county, 4 members are appointed by the city, 1 member is appointed jointly by the city and the county, and then we have a representative from the Friends of the Library and a representative from the Bronte Club that serve on that board. So it's quite a large board. So the city appointments, we have 1 term that's available that will end in ending in October of 2020, and the board member is not eligible for reappointment. So the new term will end in October of 2023. Then we have 1 city appointment for an individual who is eligible for reappointment and desires to be reappointed. We heard him speak during Citizens Communication, Mr. Vasquez. And that term would end in October of 2023. And then we have 1 joint appointment for the city and county to consider, again, with the term ending in October of 2023, and that member is not eligible due to term limits to be reappointed. So first, we're going to ask you to consider the reappointment of Mr. Vasquez. And if he's reappointed, he will serve another term ending in October of 2023. Then we will be asking you to consider the city-appointed position that will, and if possibly positions, if Mr. Vasquez is not reappointed, that will end in October of 2023. And then lastly, we'll be asking you to consider the appointment of one of the applicants to the joint city-county position on the board, and the new appointment will end in October of 2023. And the 4 applicants are David Vasquez, Ashley Sison, Jake Truss, and Tony Vasquez is our gentleman that's requesting to be reappointed. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, so the first thing that we need to consider, and you also have a packet of ballots there on your desk, and Mr. Bachnight will be texting his ballot to City Attorney Gush. But the first question that we have is whether or not you guys want to reappoint Mr. Vasquez to serve on the commission, or on the Library Advisory Board.
I move that we reappoint Mr. Vasquez to the Library Board.
Second.
Motion is second to reappoint Mr. Vasquez to the Library Board. Any discussion on that matter? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay, so now we will consider the city-appointed position that will end in October of 2023. If you'll take ballot number 1 on your library advisory packet there, and circle 1 name of the individual that you would like to nominate to be appointed to that position. And again, we'll go with the highest vote getter and vote again if we need to. Tiebreaker. Take just a moment to tally this, but just one moment. serve in that position, that's the one-year position, will be with 5 votes. Ashley Sison and Jake Truss received 1 vote. So Ms. Sison will be appointed to the one-year position. So now we'll move on to the other city appointed position. I'm sorry, that's not a one-year position. That's a full-term position. I'm sorry. But the next is a full-term position as well. It's a city-county joint position. So once you guys decide on an applicant, then Dana will present the applicant to the county as well for their confirmation on that appointment. So if you'll, again, circle. Take just a moment, please. Thank you. So this time we did result in a tie. So we have 3 votes for Mr. Vasquez and 3 for Mr. Truss. So we will have to move to the third ballot on your library, and if you'll decide between those 2, and we'll hopefully see if it will come out different.
Can you remind them on the 2 names?
David Vasquez and Jake Truss. Same one, right? Yes.
It's 3-3 again.
Dr. Young on the phone.
So we did end in a tie again, and with 6 members of the council rather than 7 here, that's almost inevitable. So City Attorney Gush has
Appropriate to draw straws.
has suggested that we possibly postpone just this city-county joint appointment until the next meeting, when we hopefully have 7 members of council here and could get a consensus at that time, if y'all are agreeable to that.
That's fine.
And if it's the wish of council. We don't need to vote on it or anything, do we? Just
There's no need to vote on the postponement. We'll merely leave a blank in the resolution that you're adopting tonight, and then we will bring back that final appointment at a later date.
Can we appoint them both?
The 11 members.
Yeah, I think that would exceed the number of members on the board. And just to address briefly the mayor's comment about casting lots, I don't want anyone to think that was a spurious comment. The elections code, I believe, actually does allow for, in the case of a tied election, for there to be a casting of lots. That is an accepted method of resolving a dispute. I'm not recommending that. I'm merely pointing out that was not a comment made in jest, and that it is a valid option.
So we would just need a movement to.
But there's no urgency. I see no reason to not postpone.
No,
Well,
but
I'd
we would
like
just
to-
be postponing the
You have any-
city-county appointment.
Right, yeah. I think we can do the 2 that.
The city appointment and the reappointment, if you would
Yes.
like, yes.
Right.
I make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the 2 elected tonight and postpone the 3rd.
Correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
And a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, item E3, which is a resolution to amend the city's fund balance policy. And I'd like to point out, Mayor and Council, that I passed out before this meeting a substituted draft of that policy with some minor revisions to it. And so if Council approves the resolution tonight, you'll be approving it with the substituted version that was passed out this evening.
And if I may, Mr. Balknight has a copy of this as well.
Yes, we emailed it to him.
Okay, good.
We did that. Thank you. Mayor, Council, I got a little quick, less than 5 minutes presentation. Hopefully I can clear up some things. Also, after this quick PowerPoint, I would like to go through the policy and address the items that I'm suggesting to be changed, if that's okay with y'all. First of all, this is a quick history. In 2013, we brought this before council for a policy change based on the Gatsby Accounting Standard Board. It's a board that governs accounting. This is what you shall do. So back then it said you need to establish some classifications so you fund balance. In other words, identify what's non-expendable, restricted, committed, assigned, unassigned. And I laid out some examples next to each one, which each classification means or corresponds to. Also, back in 2015, majority of y'all remember that we came back and amended the policy to increase it from 23.5 to 25%. Several years ago, it was 15%, so we slowly creeped it up, so it got to 25%. So here we are today. What we're suggesting is this. I would like to establish in the policy the minimum fund balance for enterprise and internal service. I went back and think about it, why it was not included. I cannot answer that question. But I know we always have it included in the budget, the documents, and everything is always there. For some reason, it was always left out. I have not, and I like to get that back in there. So my primary suggestion for them, for sure, we get that in there. The second one is, as we talked about it in the budget process, and I also talked about it 2 weeks ago here, is to establish a fund, and I'm going to just call it a stabilization fund, or call it whatever you want to name. We'll work on the name. But basically, it's to put excess fund balance and working capital into this fund. One thing I failed to do last time is, okay, let's define what I mean by excess one-time money. Okay. As you well know, each category operational, we got general fund, water, and environmental, have a minimum fund balance of 25%. What I'm talking about is anything amount above that will be considered, not to be taken away automatically. This is eligible to be considered to be possible move to this rainy day account or stabilization fund. However, before you start moving it, there's a lot of thinking that goes on, which maybe I didn't explain correctly, or I didn't leave it out because my mind works kind of weird. So that's one step. The second step is that, okay, what are some one-time expenditures that I know that are going to occur in these particular funds in this coming fiscal year, next budget, or 2 years down the road? There's no sense me taking that money away because I'm going to need it here. So I take that off that balance. If it's anything remaining, I'm saying that amount is what's going to be moved to this rainy day account or stabilization fund. Another way to look at this, take a look, for example, is this savings account. Me personally, if I put $100 on a monthly paycheck away, it's because I don't have to touch it. I don't need it. But if I need that $100 to pay electricity bill, or I will need it next month, there's no sense for me putting that money away because I'm going to tap it. This is not the main reason for this fund. You want to put money in there that you can maybe set aside for long-term purposes and let it grow there, as we do with our OPEB fund. As you recall, we have put money there for the past several years to try and let it grow. So at a given time in 10, 11 years from now, it starts paying for itself. The same concept is here. It's going to take a little longer. We're not going to get there right away because I can't invest this money overnight in big, high returns, but still the concept is the same. And it's also, you want to seed it. There's no sense putting money in there and then next year you come back and you deplete it. If that's the case, if that's the theory, then there's no sense moving money at all. Another way to look at this is another way to leverage money with debt issuing. In other words, that if you need $9 million and you only have X million dollars and $8 million in capacity, well, we can take $1 million here. Now we can do what we need to do. It also can replenish anything on the other reserves that somehow we might have drawn it down for some emergencies. Or the other way it can be looked at it is it's another level of reserve. So you got your 25 and you got this other one. So you got a more cushion to involved here. But bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be council decision as to what money goes in there. Staff would have to present to you how we came out with the logic, how this movies, what money can be moved over, and in the future, what projects can be done. But bottom line, it's going to be your decision overall. Does that make sense so far?
Makes sense.
Okay.
I have a question,
I'm not
Gilbert.
sure.
Yes, sir.
On the policy, as it was written, it was stated that the city manager was authorized to spend out of this fund, the self-finance or stabilization fund, up to $50,000 without council's approval. Is that still in there?
That's still in there, and thanks for catching that. The only reason we put that 50 because I believe the council gave them the authority for $50,000. Now, if you want to change that just for this particular fund, it's up to council. That's the only reason I put that in there. Does that explain that, Mr.
Yes, that would be my proposal when we get to more discussion.
Yes, sir. And the last slide, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Let's take general fund, for example. I'm pretty familiar with that one. So you got $5 million in excess above the 25%. In other words, you got $5 million that you can use for one-time expense. The following question I would have for myself is that, hey, am I going to need some money in the 22 year that I know I will have some budgetary items for about, they're going to be a one-time expense. And that amount might end up being $3 million or $4 million. So let's say it's $4 million. So I want to take off $4 million off that $5 million. That leaves me $1 million of the excess. That's the amount of money, if it's okay, to move to the stabilization fund, because I don't need to touch that right now or the next 2-3 years. I'm not looking at one window. I'm looking maybe 2-3 years down the road too. So that is what the amount I would be suggesting to move to this fund. Does that pretty helps out? And it should be used for one-time money. I think one of the ideas that we talked about, I think Ms. Scott and I had a conversation is that, how about the recurring expenses? Because whenever you do a project, you might have some recurring expenses. That's a given because you can still have some maintenance and all that. But all those topics should be addressed a long time ago on the planning stage. What I'm talking about here is strictly getting the project up and running. The recurring expense should be addressed in the budget and should be paid for or funded by any other operating funds to address it, not this fund. Okay? Somebody had yes, ma'am.
Gilbert, would this take place, I guess, at the end of the year when you already have your fund balances and then we would decide, or you would bring it to us and we would tell you, okay, you can move so much from the excess in the fund balance?
The plan
that's the time when you want to present
during the budget process, Mr. Garza
Okay.
will be coming forward with his budget recommendation. Along with that, he's going to have this part of his plan as well.
Okay.
And then if it's approved, then it's part of the whole budget process.
Oh, okay.
Which would also be after the audit.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. So I hope that clears it up. Now, I got a couple of suggestions if y'all want to go through it now, unless you have some more questions about some of these comments I just made. Can you flip that overhead on? I feel like back in college. Okay, the first thing, it's on the first page. I'm suggesting let's delete item E, the highlighted yellow one, because I believe some, pay as you go might confuse some people. So let's just leave it out and let's talk about cash, basic cash. So what I'm suggesting, let's cross out E if it's okay with council. Any questions? On page 3, I have an item here. The reason I'm crossing this out because it refers to maintenance and recurring expenses, and I don't want to address anything that relates to recurring expense. So I thought I'd just cut it off and saying that it's only related to one-time expenses, period, in the story, and not have the remaining verbiage to it. I don't address any additional funding, future expenditures, maintenance, blah, blah, blah. I'm cutting that out, so I want to make sure it's clear cut that it's a one-time expense. Any questions?
Yeah, all right, so if there's an excess, what you're saying before we get to the red stuff is that you could use that for a one-time expense. That's what we're doing right now.
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay, what you're adding is the alternative is to move it to a different fund.
You have that option to do that. Or transfer it to a self-financing fund. That's all I'm saying.
So that at that point, the limitations that were on it in the fund that it was in are now a different set of limitations, or maybe none.
The limitation is still the same as one time.
Okay.
Because if you go to that definition of that stabilization fund section,
right,
it talks about it. It's one time.
One time. Okay.
Okay. The next page, that's where we talk about the stabilization fund. You have that?
There we go.
This one.
And ultimately, too, to make it even more of a clear point, is that ultimately this movement of funds would be approved by council. And so at the end of the day, council would be the ones to make the decision on how much money gets transferred to the stabilization fund.
There it is.
And then ultimately, council would be the ones to decide how to use it as well.
Okay.
Especially if we amend it to exclude the city manager from having that authority of up to $50,000, even more so, it would be solely up to council.
Correct. To
decide how to spend the funds.
I skipped over that stabilization fund section, Ms. Scott. I'm suggesting that we cross out pay as you go. So this fund supports the city's philosophy of one-time repairs. And cross out the one-time maintenance too, so I don't have nothing related to maintenance. And I also have or eliminate the use of long-term debt, because that's kind of confusing too. That's a suggestion there. I already talked about that section. That's the other section I'm suggesting is the same what I said before. Just eliminate any concept that addresses any future maintenance costs. I'm doing that there too, any additional staff. The same thing I'm doing for the Environmental Service Fund, which I also crossing out, which will not require additional future expenses, maintenance, blah, blah, blah. I'm crossing that out too. Yes, sir.
Out of this fund?
No, that's
maintenance.
Yeah, well, yes.
From this fund, because anything we build will
it's going to have
require
maintenance. And that maintenance cost should be addressed at that fund level,
Right.
general fund, water fund, and environmental fund, not this fund.
We can't go back to this fund to pay for that maintenance on that one-time expense.
That's not the purpose of this fund.
Got you.
And also keep in mind that this policy can also always be amended.
Absolutely.
And so as we go through it, if we all learn some things about the transfer of funds, projects that are being spent, all of that can obviously always be amended later.
I just have a question. When we're working on the budget and we come up with the tax rate, and then we think, okay, we would like to do one-time projects. Okay, and we always think, okay, we're going to try and do this with one-time money. This money would not be used for that, I understand, but are you taking the ability away for us to use this money on that particular budget year, or can we tap it if we need it?
The philosophy behind it is that hopefully we read things correctly. So we're taking away, we leave the money that needs to be taken care of in general fund, for example.
Right. Uh-huh.
And if somehow something happens throughout the year, fiscal year, and something comes out, you have the ability to go tap that fund if you want to access it to do some other things. It's not taking away no ability to anybody. It's because, as I mentioned before, this fund will be governed by y'all. The only thing I'll be doing is reporting. I'll be the trustee, technically, reporting back to here's the balance, this is what's coming in, this is what's going out. And before it goes out or in, Mr. Garza will be presenting to you a plan of action, how to fund and what's going forward. So nothing's going away from council. The power is still there. It's just another methodology. Another way to look at this, Ms. Elise, is that if you want to really regress to this, that right now we're kind of doing that, but with each individual fund. Because we're leaving that money there, right? But somehow, we thought, why don't we take what we really don't need and put it aside, be more transparent and have it there so we know that's let that grow as a seed and keep growing, and we can be more aggressive and try to keep that thing growing instead of living it within there because we have a habit. If it's there, we'll spend it. That kind of deal. So that's the whole intent. We're not changing anything. So it's just more taking the money that we don't need for right now, like a savings account, and just put it there and let it sit there until we need it or council wants to use it in the future. That's all it is.
Okay.
An example. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as an example, one of the things is just to kind of piggyback off of what Gilbert's mentioning. Technically, we have the ability to do budget amendments, right? And so technically, we have the ability to do a budget amendment if something comes up, and we can take it from the fund balance. But let's run a scenario of timing, right? So say, for instance, right now, we're at the very beginning stage of fiscal year 21 already, with it being October. But we know that hurricane season isn't over yet, right? So if we needed to tap into a resource of funds for a response or for something, and we don't have a separate fund of cash, we would have to take it from fund balance, right? And so early in the fiscal year would probably mean that we have to move some projects around, cut back on certain things because it's just so early in the fiscal year that we don't really know what's going to happen. But if we have a separate fund that's already accounted for completely separate, isn't necessarily allocated for projects this fiscal year, et cetera, then if that were to happen, well, we would still do a budget amendment, except we would do it tapping into the stabilization fund, which would not necessitate us cutting back from what we plan to do this fiscal year.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that example helps kind of just explain a potential scenario where having a separate fund that's unaccounted for might be able to help us.
That's what I'm really struggling with. And let me start out and say that I think the reserves that's part of this policy too, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's a good idea. What I'm struggling with is that we're basically creating, you called it a rainy day fund, but I'm not sure it's really that. It's just a fund that on the one hand could be used where we could be parking money for a project that everybody identified and supported, but that's not the way you're setting it up. But on the other hand, the taxpayers are going to be saying, well, if you've got enough money for, again, not a rainy day fund, but a surplus fund, why are we continuing to pay taxes at this rate? And I have difficulty answering that. Now, if this surplus fund if council on the front end said, we need to build a new fire station, we need to build a new police station, we want to start putting that toward that, to me, that makes more sense than we want to build up this pot of money and some future council can decide what to do with it. Well, of course, if I were that future council and somebody else had left that money for me, I'd be very happy. But I'm not thinking that it's a responsible thing for me to be saying, hey, this is a great idea. That's where I'm really struggling with it.
I think what might help, Gilbert, is if we define how excess is created to begin with. And that might help council and even the public understand the differences and the nuances of how that's not really related to our ongoing operation and impacts, tax rates, sales tax revenue, things of that sort. And so, Gilbert, can you touch on that?
One example of excess that can be played out in here is like you can have, let's talk about payroll. We have vacancies and everything else. And at the end of the year, as you well know, we don't spend all of it, correct? Well, next year we still budget at the full level, but we didn't spend it this year. I have this available funds that I can maybe appropriate to do something else as a one-time expense, not as a reoccurring. So that money, for example, or there might be a street project that came in under. We have several of those situations. It might come in $200,000-$300,000. That is left over, what I'm calling excess fund balance, technically, if it above that 25%. So back to your comment, Ms. Scott. Your point is well taken. I don't disagree with you, but I just thought, there's several ways to approach this fund. it's a baby step. So you can start it this way, and also can say, hey, we got a fire station in 10 years, 5 years, and you can start putting money for that. That's fine with that. There's nothing wrong with that. What I was referring to is that I know I got a CIP, I know I got these items coming down the pipe, but I'm referring to items that are not even on the radar. And all of a sudden, a discussion starts happening at council. Hey, what about this? What about that? And there we go. We got probably some money set aside. We can maybe do this because we have already set these other items aside and taken care of it. So we're not doing something any different than before. And it's just another tool to give council to put aside money that you can put aside. You don't need to be using it right now, with the understanding that you're going to take this excess money, like I've been saying, that can't be applied to recurrent, because then it's not, you defeat the whole purpose. That you can use it where you're going to take, like I mentioned before, you scrape off everything that you're going to need this coming year. You got one-time expenses coming year, take that off because you don't want to send it over there because you're going to spend it right here. So you're going to put money over here just to sit there for now and earn interest. And along with these other funds, the same theory too. Yes, you're taking the utility side, you're taking water, and the same thing there. This is the leftover funds. They're not going to be, you can use it back in there, but we can augment these other ones and let it grow faster. And that's the whole purpose. It's just another financial tool. And if council feels very uncomfortable with it, and that, I do respect that. And
from my perspective, as an other view point for the public, I think the way we do it now, where this excess kind of gets hidden in all these places, isn't very transparent. I think when you bring it into the light, that it's an identifiable thing that the public is aware of, and it's how we choose to use it. We can say we're going to use it for this thing, and it gives a taxpayer the opportunity to come and question us. Well, why are you using it? And if I can convince them that I want to see this thing build up so that when it comes time to have an expense, it may be something that allows us not to have to raise a tax rate to do it. It's building a trust with the public of what our intentions are with this money. And it depends on how we behave with it, I think, more than anything, and what the public is going to do. I think if we're open, that we're trying to create a way to just have alternatives to where we have more options for funding, because as the city grows, we're going to have discussions about funding, because it's going to become important as we grow and we get economic development in here. We're going to start having discussions about things we need to fund to keep our economic engine going and keep the growth coming. It's just another tool that I think is more transparent to the public.
That's a perfect example, Mayor. That you hit it on the nail there. That you might have an economic project, and you get these requests from Dale Fowler and everybody else about, hey, can we do these incentives and everything else? This is a perfect example. You can use this without tapping the general fund and everything else. As to the tax rate, if you use this money to lower the tax rate, my response to a taxpayer, that only is good for 1 year. Right. Then what are you going to do the following year? I'm going to go up again. So that's the whole purpose. This is for one-time money. It should be used as quarterly, as that way. But just like the mayor's mentioned, it's how we treat it and how we go forward with this. It's no difference how you use debt and how you manage debt. Same thing here. So it's up to the council how they want to handle this. I think it's another good financial tool that you put money aside. Everybody sees it. It's not in that fund balance, and that's all it was. Yes, ma'am.
I have a follow-up in a slightly different direction.
Sure.
And I know that we have, I know that we're a city, we're a government. We have wonderful staff. So my question is not intended to be a slight on anyone. But in other organizations, and perhaps here, the concept I want to get to is use it or lose it. Because you've got a budgeted amount. You mentioned salaries. You've got a budgeted amount. If you don't spend that budgeted amount, it's going to be moved to this other fund. Where are the checks and balances for our department? Is it part of our government structure, or where are the checks and balances for that?
Gilbert, let me address
You
that.
go right ahead.
So I think we're talking about two different things, right? And so operationally, internally, obviously it's our duty as management, Gilbert's a CFO, to every year assess every departmental budget. Obviously, there are instances where there are opportunities for efficiencies, and we take those opportunities as they come, because obviously we all want to run a lean operation. And so that's our job internally to do that. In the context of the conversation today, though, it does not apply. So let me give an example on the salaries, right? So every year we budget for 100% for salaries. And we know that we don't spend 100%, right? Because we have vacancies. So I'm going to make up a number. Let's say we spend 75%. So council, if this was going to be a use it or lose it, council would tell us, well, we're not going to fund you 100% of salaries next year. We're only going to fund 75% of salaries because this past year you only spent 75%. That's very unlikely, right? Because every year it's smart for us to budget 100% of salaries. And so if anybody were to, for the context of the stabilization fund, if anybody were to administer a use it or lose it approach to it, it would be council. It would be council that would tell us, well, if you don't use all your money for salaries in your budget, we're not going to fund that 100% next year, right? And so I think there's a big distinction between the use it or lose it sort of approach that we might take internally, and that term, quite frankly, is not a term that I would utilize in describing opportunities for efficiencies. But that's something that we do internally that doesn't necessarily impact this at all, in my opinion.
That helped. I mean, I know other organizations face that, and I didn't think that was a situation here. But I also felt like if I had that question, there were probably others that would have it too.
Sure, that's fair.
Thank you.
And that salary example, I think, is the classic example that we could share with everybody too, right? That just because we don't use all the money for salaries because of vacancies doesn't mean that we're going to cut a bunch of compensation or salary amounts next year.
Good point. Thank you.
Those are the suggested changes. I know Mr. Bognar had another one. I'm not too sure where that stands, so I'll leave that for that council.
Where is that? Mr. Bachner talked about that.
It's on the
First page.
let's go to the
Third
can you
page.
put
The
it
second
page?
page.
Second page?
Yes.
It's also
Under
the top
assigned
of the-
fund balance.
And again, right, James putting it up there right.
And it's the top of the fourth page. It also has
Where is it? Is that frozen or?
Well, I move we amend your.
But we need a
take that paragraph
motion first, don't we, or do we?
That's what he's doing.
He's got amended.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Procedurally, we don't have a motion on the floor yet, and
To
so
amend.
if council members would like to discuss informally making changes to the policy before there is a motion to adopt that policy, you could certainly do that informally. If you choose to do it more formally, the correct procedure would be for there to be a motion and a second on the floor to approve the resolution, and then a motion to amend that resolution, a motion to amend that motion by changing the policy underneath. I tend to prefer, in this case, the more informal path, because essentially what you're doing is you're changing the suggested policy just like we substituted a version of the policy at the beginning of the meeting. And so if you would like to essentially revise that policy, and there is consensus to do that, and you can take a formal vote on that consensus if you'd like.
What is the revision that was recommended, Mr. Goosh, and how would you do that?
My revision is you drop that last paragraph, authority to assign.
And that is on page what of what?
The second page. Second page?
Second
Authority
page.
to assign?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. You said that, okay, the original resolution didn't have all this verbiage. So when we do the motion, do we do the motion to accept this verbiage?
Right.
And then we go with his motion to change whatever we have to change?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Thomas, you want
Yeah, we
Mr.
were having
Lofgren,
a-
if I could clarify what you just requested as an amendment to the policy. I think you said the entire paragraph at the bottom of the second page, which is the heading of that paragraph is authority to assign. And I think you might have meant just to eliminate the first sentence of that paragraph, which is the sentence that includes the city manager's authority.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we want to leave in there that city council should have the authority to assign the amounts.
Is this the subject that Mr. Balknight brought up? I had
Yes.
trouble
Yes,
hearing him
sir.
earlier.
It's also on the top of page 4, though. And in the self-stabilization fund, the last sentence is appropriations may be made at the discretion of council and or the city manager.
Okay. Here's a thought.
Yeah, that may be okay.
Right.
Yeah, we can certainly do these amendments, or we can simply just bring it back at the next council meeting, fresh, clean version, and then that way it's easier, and we're not doing amendments.
I think I like that better. That'll give us time to get it all in one color.
We'll do that.
And give us time to review it. And so the motion would be to skip.
At this point, there is no motion on the
so we'll
floor,
just
so we simply move on
pass
from this
on
item
this,
to the
okay.
next without taking action.
Well, I think that's what the. Mr. Balknight, do you have a comment on that?
He did verbalize that he agreed with the decision to bring it back at another meeting.
It's odd having someone.
That's fine to bring it back.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We will move on to E4, I believe.
Yes, sir. Item E4 is a resolution to approve cooperative purchasing contracts for various computers, software, peripherals, and related equipment in the amount of $360,834.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll keep it short. Staff is seeking approval to proceed with the purchases using various cooperative contracts in the amount of $360,834. These items have already been approved, and staff from both Human Resources and Finance Department is available to answer any questions. So with municipal court, we want to renew our annual licenses so that municipal court can continue to utilize software to manage court dockets and also interact with our Brazos ticket writers. The cost is $59,534. It has been included in our 2021 budget, and it was procured through our purchasing cooperative Texas DRR, and it is deemed the best value for our needs using existing resources. Under IT, security, and auditing, we were asking to renew our networks auditor so that IT can continue to satisfy CJIS audit requirements, and also as a security layer to help us alert us to suspicious network log activity. I was getting feedback from both. I'm hearing that, so I think the cost is $28,600, and it is also procured through Texas DRR. Under IT also, we're renewing our DNS filtering service so that we can continue to provide a security layer to help prevent our employees from going to malicious websites. Cost of $12,100. It's also through DR purchases. And then through our multi-department software, it's reviewing iCompass agenda management software so we can continue to provide your agenda management online. It simplifies our packet creation process, and also its software makes it easier for citizens access. Cost is $28,600 and is purchased through a purchasing cooperative. The next two items, NeoGov. Purchasing NeoGov will allow us to integrate several HR solutions into one system that help us to provide one solution for core HR, position management, payroll, time and attendance, employee self-service, recruitment, application tracking, onboarding for new employees, e-forms, and performance evaluation processes.
And you may recall from Cheryl's budget workshop presentation that currently all of this is done, I think, is it 4 or 5 different? Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 different softwares and systems. So this really will help consolidate everything and make it easier for staff and employees and prospective employees as well.
Will this allow us to make changes in budgets to look at scenarios?
I think you're talking about OpenGov, which is the next software.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is specific for HR.
Gotcha.
Yeah. This will manage all the human resources needs. It automates their current processes, both onboarding and performance evaluations. Cost is $110,000 for this year, $90,000 for the software, $20,000 for implementation, and then the recurring expenses are quoted at $130,195. It is also was in our 2021 budget. OpenGov is the one you're referring to, Mayor. So it's a purchasing, budgeting, CIP planning, transparency, and reporting modules to improve efficiencies in budgeting and reporting processes, as well as tracking both financial and non-financial data for tracking performance metrics related to strategic initiatives. The cost for this is $132,508.19 in year one, and in years 2 through 5 is $62,853.64. Okay. This is also purchased through a DRR cooperative purchase.
And it will allow us to be able to run scenarios.
Those quicker. That's what I asked you about a long time ago, so this will let us do it.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir. That is it. If you have any other questions, we're available to answer those.
Any further questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on item E4. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Mayor, item E5 is a resolution to approve a professional services agreement with Freese and Nichols in the amount of $174,894 for a downtown master plan.
Ms. Williams.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and members of council, those near and far. I'm excited to present to y'all tonight for your consideration the Downtown Master Plan Professional Services Agreement with Freese and Nichols. And I have with me tonight Chance Sparks, who is with Freese and Nichols and would be the project manager. And just to give you a little bit of history on how we got to today, back in June, we solicited for some proposals or qualifications from consultant firms. We had 16 packets to go through, and we narrowed them down to 4. Those 4 were Freese and Nichols.
We don't need to verbalize the 4, Danielle.
Okay. Moving forward, the review committee selected Freese and Nichols, and Chance would like to present to y'all the details of the downtown master plan.
Good afternoon, or good evening. I'm Chance Sparks with Freese and Nichols. I'm really excited to be here this evening. I'm coming out of our San Marcos office, but part of why I'm excited about this project is I'm from Victoria. Victoria is actually the city that is the reason I became a city planner. So this is an opportunity for me to give back a little something. So that's part of why I am here, part of why we pursued this project. In fact, I was a neighbor of Miss Klein back when I was about that tall.
Miss Scott. That's all right.
or Miss Scott, sorry.
You were young.
So really excited to be here. I want to introduce who our project team is for this. I'm the project manager for this. I'll be essentially the face of the project throughout the duration of this. There's also a couple of other people on here that have Victoria roots, including Eddie Haas and also Ben Galvan with Civil Corp, which I believe y'all are already familiar with. And also, Eddie is working on the Ben Wilson Street project here as well. So we have a lot of touches here, and so we're viewing ourselves very much as a local choice here, bringing a lot of local interest, institutional knowledge, and really passion for this project. Downtown planning is a passion project. It requires a lot of energy, a lot of momentum building, and that's what we're laying out for you in this process. It'll begin with engagement, work through some analysis in order to capture a vision. From there, we build a master plan and all that entails. And then a detailed implementation strategy. So that way it doesn't just go and collect dust on a shelf. It gets implemented on a daily basis. Our goal is for that plan to have worn out edges and missing pages when the dust clears away. It's about an 8-month process, beginning with a steering committee, which I understand y'all have already started to conceptualize what you'd like that to be like, which is exciting. A lot of Main Street board members that are very engaged, along with other stakeholders. Especially in times like this where you have COVID going on and things like that, it's important to have champions for your projects. And that's what you want this committee to be, not just a reflection of the community, but to be those ambassadors for the plan going forward, to push the envelope on ideas. That comes a lot through the engagement process. And what we'll tell you is that for every in-person approach to engagement, there is a virtual alternative in almost every case. They vary in how their format works, but you get to the same result. And in fact, we were doing this many years before we were dealing with pandemics. And it's because of essentially this issue you see here, that every generation seeks different types of input. And this is very broad brush. But the message of this is very clear that you have to do a little bit of everything to get a complete picture of what your community wants and seeks in your downtown, or really any planning effort, ranging from in-person all the way to a purely virtual environment and everything in between. But in all of this, we always seek the engagement to have really three categories for it: innovative, collaborative, fun, and reflecting the culture of the place. So in some places, it's an emphasis on walking tours. Some places, it's an emphasis on in-person meetings. In others, we've even organized around coffee tables and done it in that approach, because that was what the culture demanded and what people were comfortable sharing their ideas in. We go through detailed analysis using geographic information systems as well as direct observation. We'll look at all your economic types of things as well. We'll be doing 3 econometric models as part of this process to really look at what's the possible in Victoria and then start charting the path to get there. We also look at things like linkages. For example, University of Houston and Victoria College, and how do you pull those into that downtown planning framework? How do you connect with Riverside Park and a lot of those issues and turn Victoria back into that hub that it was historically? We go through visioning to help capture the ideas, both in words and in visuals. A picture does tell 1,000 words. That will be part of this process as we move forward. From there, we build illustrative plans where we look at catalysts. These are key projects that make a difference in really getting the ball rolling, building momentum, and they don't have to be huge projects. It doesn't have to be a $20 million building. It can be a little $10,000 something that gets people excited and moving and engaged. And that's really what we want to see out of this process, is that continuing energy. We look at streetscaping, street sections to see what's the right fit to get your pedestrian environment that you might be seeking. How do you make that fit the environment that you're working in? We also focus heavily on preservation. Victoria is very unique. It is one of only a handful of cities that were in existence prior to the Republic of Texas. There's only a handful of them. Your history is not tied to a railroad like so many cities in Texas. So it's a great story to be told, and that can be part of telling that story and really conveying that to visitors, but also to your own local people. We'll look at parking, how to approach that, as well as making engaging public spaces where they are not simply museum pieces, but they are places that people interact with. And they become that place where people just know, what should I do tonight? Well, there's always something going on downtown. So we'll just go down there and see what happens. That's part of the goal here. We'll look at art programs, both the direct art programs that a city might fund, but also how to create funds or programs that are grassroots based, that build upon resources you already have here. You have a great arts culture in this city. We also think about things that maybe others don't. This is a great example of crime prevention through environmental design, and thinking about how do you make a space feel safe and make people want to be there, especially after dark, when sometimes people are a little bit more nervous. Make them feel very comfortable and invited. And then, of course, connecting with those surrounding neighborhoods. So many downtowns, they're looking at what's the tourism opportunity. Your first tourists are going to be those neighborhoods right next to downtown. So how do you appeal to them? Because there's a little trick for most people. What they love when they go visit a downtown somewhere else, they'll love in their own downtown. So if you design for them and build your programming around them, you're going to get your tourists. They will come. We bring also an innovative approach to implementation. We want to be able to be very transparent and communicate with the public after the plan is adopted, where you can actually create websites off of this to show, hey, here's how we're progressing as we work through the different implementation elements. So they know that not only did you listen to them, you're doing what you said you were going to do. And that gets people really excited. And when we put these together, we emphasize that we're more than a policy firm. We've actually done these things. I have restored 100-year-old houses myself. I've done lead abatement. It's not fun. We've helped small businesses create outdoor cafes and things like that. So we're not just talking about things. We can actually talk in detail about how you do it, how you finance it. I've done development financing myself. And we want people to think big, but also start small, because those small wins can become huge. The example you see here is a company called Beautiful Hiker in Buda, Texas. It started off in a little trailer. A year later, they were in a brick and mortar building. A year after that, they moved to a bigger building. A year after that, they opened a second location. So you can create these entrepreneurial ecosystems in your downtowns that are just these great incubators for place. But really, when this all boils down, is that while we're experts in planning, this is always and always will be your plan. We are the resource. We bring expertise to that, but it's all about fitting you. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, any thoughts y'all have, and go from there.
Excited.
Great.
What's going on?
Thank you for waiting.
Oh, I'm perfectly happy to wait. I'm just happy to be here.
Let me ask you something. The master plan is going to go like from the Houston Highway all the way down Main Street to the end of One Lynn, or is it going to go a little bit further?
So that's part of what we've actually outlined within this process, is how to define your study area, because you can define downtown Victoria in a lot of ways. Some people might just think about the area right around De Leon Plaza. Mm-hmm. Some people will think about stretching it all the way up practically to the university, and everything in between. So that'll be one of our first processes, how to figure out what that core should be, because one of the techniques in downtown planning is to focus your resources and your energy. We actually did the Fort Worth downtown planning, and we've actually redefined their core 3 different times, because you get successful in the small area, so you bounce a little further out, and you bounce a little further out, and that's creating lots and lots of energy, and that's what we see probably playing out here as well.
And obviously, this is exciting times for everybody, right? Especially related to downtown. And there'll be more information to come as we roll out the process. Obviously, Danielle will be point on that, as well as the Main Street Board. And so there'll be more information to follow.
So if people are interested in volunteering, because hopefully they are, they should contact Danielle with Main Street.
You mean being involved with the process?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
talked about
that helps. Yes,
and working on
I will also say that we are working, and I don't believe it's live yet, but we are working on having a very specific landing page on our website that would end up being like victoriatx.gov/masterplans, because we have so many master plans going on right now. And so the idea is to create a centralized website that people can find information on the downtown master plan, drainage master plan, parks master plan, and also in that landing page be able to input their information for the plans that they're interested in being involved with. And so we'll prepare that and roll that out as all these plans sort of get kicked off.
And for those listening in, my phone number is 485-3060, and you'll be calling Danielle Williams. And you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter. Well, I'll have updates in there as well as we go along. So you can go to the website, victoriatx.org or victoriamainstreet.org, and you can click on the newsletter and sign up there.
.org or gov?
I'm sorry, it's .gov. Old habits die hard.
Say that again then.
Okay, victoriamainstreet.gov.
If I understood you correctly, part of it will be a plan of implementation as well.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Because the plans are, one of my theories about master planning is there comes a time when you have to stop planning and start doing. And that's extremely hard to get some people to take that step.
Absolutely.
Out of the planning to doing.
Yeah, it's not even that unusual to see some implementation kind of start during the planning process.
Good.
Yeah.
An action item?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it is.
I move we adopt
Second.
E5.
We have a motion and a second on item E5. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, item E6 is a resolution to approve the Selective Traffic Enforcement Program Comprehensive Grant.
Jameson, or do we have?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're going to let Captain Sanderson, he's over operations and oversees the unit that will be conducting this grant if so approved. So, Captain Sanderson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you said, I'm Kevin Sanderson. I'm the Patrol Division Commander for the Victoria Police Department, and here tonight to talk about the Selective Traffic Enforcement Program. It's also known by us as the STEP program. It's federally funded and it's state administered by the Texas Department of Transportation. The goal of the program is to reduce crashes, fatalities, and injuries, high visibility enforcement to prevent crashes and hazardous driving, as well as public education programs are the methods utilized to achieve the goals of the program. TxDOT will pay up to $21,275 to cover overtime for officers, and the city would pay $5,169 in match hours. The VPD will conduct 5 community presentations, 5 media exposures, and 2 community event presentations. That concludes my short presentation. Do you have any questions?
Okay.
You waited 2 hours for that one.
It's pretty straightforward, and we've done the program since 2016-17 and some other years off and on for many years before that. And it's effective to see the officers out there stopping vehicles. It's not just the one you stop. It's the ones that drive by and see that stop to help prevent further violations and hazardous violations and accidents, crashes. So it's very effective.
I move we adopt E5.
I second it.
Motion is second on item E6.
Six. Oh, E6, sorry.
Any further questions or any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
And now I don't see anything under city manager's reports.
No, sir.
So it is 7:12, and I think we will recess into executive session. Mr. Gitt.
Yes, sir. The City Council will recess now into executive session under 3 different sections of the Texas Government Code. First, Section 551.072 to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. The deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the city in its negotiations with a third party. Second, under Section 551.087, to discuss or deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect that the City Council seeks to have stay or